Our next speakers, Connor Nolan, Jim Ryan, and they're going to tell you about an accident they had in the Gothic Couloir, a couple of years ago? 2 winters ago. I'm not going to give them a ton of intro because I think their story is going to speak for itself. Thanks, guys. Okay. The clicker's right there.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, my name is Connor Nolan, and most people here know me as Chip. I moved to Jackson in October 2014, and we're here to tell you about my story of getting caught in an avalanche January 12th, 2017.
Hi, I'm Jim Ryan. I'm Chip's bad influence, I guess.
So when I originally moved to town, I had been ski racing my whole life. I'm from New Hampshire, and I was just having a good time skiing in bounds. Wasn't really finding my group, didn't really have a big pressure to be skiing anything big or anything out of bounds even. I was just enjoying my time skiing a big mountain. I'd only skied in New Hampshire mostly, so ski racing is full of ice, and it was fun to get out there and ski some powder.
Yeah, and then I moved to town. So I moved in with Chip, and I moved to Jackson for the explicit purpose of becoming a professional skier. I wanted to be in the movies. So I moved here, and I immediately got to work. I asked around what the scariest thing you could do was, and then I went and did it. And for a while that worked out. You know, I got into this cycle of taking extreme risk, getting away with it, getting lots of high fives at the bar. And it felt really good for a couple of years. And after 2 years of living with Chip and doing this and getting away with it, Chip started coming up with ideas of his own. He went from an inbound skier to someone who was all of a sudden leading the missions to the scary places.
Yeah, so my mindset changed pretty quickly once I started to find my group and be pushed by these guys who were older than me that had always been Division I skiers in the East. And I saw them come out here very hot. They wanted to ski everything. They wanted to ski it all in the first year that they were out here, and they wanted to be proven, and they wanted to, really fulfill what they wanted. So on the left here, you can see that's just a few days before my accident, January 4th. I was skiing S&S, and I actually landed on a rock right in there. But this is just where my head was at, and I wanted to push it. These guys wanted to be professional skiers. I thought I didn't want that, but I wanted to outdo them. I wanted to be better than them, but I wanted to do it for me, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So on the right, that's the year before. So that's 2016. That's the first time I skied Central Couloir. And I skied Central Couloir 3 times in 8 days because I was so hooked on that addiction for adrenaline and for pushing it out in the backcountry. I really wanted to prove myself here, and I wanted to push it hard without almost any knowledge. But I had many years a few years in the backcountry, so I was feeling overconfident, and I just wanted to keep going up and up. So that brings us to the day, January 12th. We had all met the night before. I think it was about Monday. This is a Thursday. Monday, I decided I wanted to ski Gothic Couloir. So this is 4 days in advance. It was snowing all week, and we saw there was a chance for some sun, so we were going to go film Gothic Couloir, and I was ready for it mentally. So we woke up that morning, got on the tram, went out the gates, and started making our way out. And we had definitely taken our time, just poking out there. There's definitely some wind the night before. There's 4 inches of snow that had fallen, and we were up on top of Gothic Couloir. It took us some time to get there. There's lots of deep boot packing. And we got up there, we set up everything. We had a drone and 3 camera angles, and we were ready to go. The next slide is me skiing Central Couloir with very little skiing actually happening. Here it is. So as you can see there, it didn't go very well. I had broken a ski, and everything else was fine. I had lost the ski right up in the middle of the couloir, so I hiked back up, got my ski, skied down, and continued. So they packed up all their film equipment, came around to meet me, and it was definitely starting to get later in the day at that point. It was probably 12:45 by the time we set off from the bottom of Gothic Couloir. And I had been out there the most. I'd been out there 2 or 3 times. Just maybe 2 weeks before, I was out there looking at it, trying to figure out when it was going to be good. And this is very early for Gothic, so we were all ready to go. We high-fived at the bottom of the run. You know, I had a broken ski, so I put on my uphill ski. It's a very long traverse back to the village, but we were, you know, ready to get back there, have a beer at Nick Wilson's, and go on with our lives. This is just to show you the amount of indestructibility that I had built up, and I felt that nothing could hurt me. After coming out of this, throttling myself wall to wall, I thought that nothing could hurt me, and that was a continued mindset. So here's the forecast from that morning. As many of the other speakers have said, considerable there, and that's, you know, we definitely were asking for it going out there that day. It had snowed probably 3 feet that week, but we needed a lot of snow to be able to be in there, so we thought it was our best day and best opportunity. Here's some more there for you. And that brings us to the next step. We were all on our skis heading back in, so I was leading the charge. We had a group of 6 because we had lots of film equipment, and we were ready to head out. On the left there, that is the actual slide path. So we started out from Gothic Couloir, and we got down to the basin there, and we were moving fast. It was 1 o'clock at that point, and we were moving probably quicker than we should have been, and came to gain the first ridge there, and I stopped on a little high spot, and I saw a, you know, very obvious terrain option that was in a problem for us. So I turned around, I looked at Jim, and I said, just keep an eye on me right here. This is definitely something we got to worry about. And at that moment, I turned my skis to cut across it, and right then is when I knew I was getting caught in an avalanche. The crown had broken 10 to 15 feet above me. It was 2.5 feet, and I didn't have much hope. There's no skiing out of it. And I pulled my avalanche airbag and was head first going down the slope, and it felt like somebody had pulled me up by the neck. And I came to the surface, and I saw what was going on. I saw some trees coming my way. So my skis are gone, and I attempted to swim because I knew I needed to get my feet underneath me in front of me because my head was important. And I hit a tree about 90 degrees to the slope on my right side, and that is kind of the end of my day then. I don't really remember too much after that. Turns out I was on that tree with a shattered pelvis, 11 broken ribs, lacerated kidney, lacerated liver, and a punctured lung. So I was in pretty bad shape. I'll let you hear from Jim after that.
So yeah, Chip turned around, he said, watch me here. And then, you know, immediately the crown broke above him. And just a little like flashback to the mindset that at least I was in at that time. I didn't yell avalanche, I didn't yell slide. I yelled, you know, ski, Chip, ski, because I was convinced, that skiing could save us from anything. That our skill as skiers, you know, kind of could save us. But of course he stood no chance and instantly was taken under. And so he gets pulled out of sight. And so we switch all our beacons to search. I take one other person in the party of 6 with me. We go out into the path. Only one other person because it broke halfway down the chute, so there's still, you know, the whole top half of the chute is just hanging, ready to go. So we have the party looking at us from above. We go out into the chute, and then that's when we see Chip's airbag on the tree. And so we ski down to him, and I clear the snow away from his face, and he says my name. And I instantly switch into everything's okay mode, you know, because I've now located him. And that's because at the time I was in this kind of dualistic mindset where it was like you were either okay and everything was 100% or you weren't. So I saw Chip, he was alive, therefore everything was okay. Of course, everything wasn't okay. He was dying. But it took me 25 minutes to figure that out. We were trying to find skis for him to ski out. He couldn't even move. We couldn't even get him off the tree, and we were trying to figure out how to get him out of there. And yeah, it took us almost half an hour to decide that we needed help. And it was getting dark. And so we called for help, and the helicopter came, and then it left. And this whole time, Chip he's coughing blood. He's on like a 2-minute loop of memory where he has no idea where he is. And we can't move him.
So to tell you a little bit about the rescue, as Jim mentioned, it was getting dark, and we were into the shade. I had fallen hypothermic pretty much immediately. So the call went out to search and rescue. Cody was on his way to the gym. Cody Lockhart and AJ Wheeler were there. Cody was the rescue man, and AJ was the doctor. And Cody got to the hangar. AJ was at the village. And they got a door off of the aircraft so they could do a short haul. And this is all without knowing where I am. They have coordinates, but they don't know what the situation is looking like. And they got the helicopter in the air. And one thing I can vividly remember is seeing the helicopter come over the top of me and then watching it go. And that was a moment where I thought I was going to die for sure, because I was hopeless, and I was there, and I was freezing. And I had every coat on that these guys had, and it didn't matter. I had a lot of internal bleeding. So they went to the village, picked up AJ Wheeler, came to us, dropped the guys down, and I remember saying to myself, man, they're never going to get here. They're so far away down there. Of course, they were there in 2 seconds. They were able to walk. And so they got to me, and Cody took charge of the scene, and he started having the guys build a platform and start to, have an extraction point, because I was on a tree, so there's no way they were going to get me from there, so they had to move me. So they put me into a suck bag, which is essentially a large bag that you take all the air out to stabilize the victim. And AJ had put me on to ketamine and fentanyl. So at that point, I was gone. I don't remember much, but I was comfortable. So they got me moved, and then they came in with the helicopter, picked me up. And when they dropped me off on the road, Nicole, the pilot, didn't have time to get Cody and AJ back in the helicopter. They dropped us and left them there because it was that tight on time. So that is phenomenal, and I'm very lucky, 100 times and again. On the left there, you can see that's my x-rays from my pelvis. They put in 2 plates and 13 screws. It was pretty incredible. That's Cody and AJ there, bringing the helicopter back in to pick me up. And it was absolutely amazing. AJ Wheeler was at the village that day, got the call, came, got me, went home, showered, and then was my ER doctor in St. John's. So it's pretty incredible. But one thing I really want to press on is the facts that when you're going out there into the backcountry, just like I was, you need to really understand who you're involving in your actions. I had no idea that I was potentially putting AJ and Cody, these 2 men who have lives and families and jobs to attend. I didn't know that I was going to be going out to Gothic that day and calling them into the mountains and putting them under hang fire in an avalanche path. And it's very surreal to understand that they are doing that daily because they want to. But we need to definitely understand that our actions in the mountains are forcing other people to potentially be coming and putting themselves into the mountains. So that's one of my main points. It's just to understand that for sure.
Yeah, and that was a lesson that actually took some time for me to realize. I didn't learn from this event and from Chip's accident until that summer. I had to leave Jackson. I was so entrenched in the mindset, in the reward pathways of Jackson and risk taking, that it took me, leaving Jackson for a summer to realize that my actions were completely irresponsible, and not only did I need to live it, but I needed time, and I needed time away from the scene, if you will, and that's when I realized what we were doing was, it's one thing to risk your own life, it's a totally another thing to risk someone else's, and we did. My actions, contributed to Chip being there. Chip's actions, put AJ and Cody in a slide path, and that is something that is, it's not okay. It's not all right.
Definitely also want to say that it's really important, if you're in trouble, to call Teton Search and Rescue, because they want to come get you. After coming back, I went home for 8 months of recovery with my family, and I spent a lot of good time sitting on a couch thinking about my actions. And one of the main takeaways I had was just the amazing community that we all have here in Jackson. From the minute I got into the ICU to the minute I left Jackson 3 weeks later, I was never alone. I had somebody in my hospital room, friends, co-workers, people I barely knew were just coming by to sit with me for an hour and a half. And when I went home, I thought I was going to have a lot of shame and a lot of doubt about my accident, and I didn't know if I was going to be welcomed back into the community here. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to continue to live here. I wasn't sure if I was going to work anymore. I wasn't sure if anything was going to work. Last year, I came to this event with Hoback Sports, and it was the first time I saw opportunity for me to be welcomed by the Teton Search and Rescue family, and every single one of them is extremely happy that they always say, thank you for living. They're so happy that I'm here, and I can't thank them enough for everything that they've done for me, and also just to, extend that hand and bring me back in, and here I am standing in front of you with this opportunity to try to help a little bit. So thank you to everyone at Teton Search and Rescue, and thank you all for being here today.
You guys, that takes a lot of guts to stand up in front of a crew and say we screwed up, and really appreciate you also saying thank you. So thank you for coming up here. Who's got questions for these guys? Stephanie.
Connor, I first got introduced to your story because I'm a member of Teton County Search and Rescue, but the part that really interested me was when you actually met Cody after your accident. You came back. Can you talk about that for just a second?
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I was boot fitting at Hoback Sports, and Cody walked in, and I had only seen his photo because I made sure when AJ and I were in the ER, I made sure he wrote down the names so I could thank these people that saved my life. And I was just boot fitting, and this guy came in with some Langs, and he was saying he's a professional, and I was like, is this Cody Lockhart? I wasn't really sure, and because I'd never seen him in person. And I went into the back, and I started fixing his boots. I came back out, and I looked at him, and I said, are you Cody Lockhart? And he was like, yeah, I'm Cody Lockhart. And I said, you saved my life last year in No Name Canyon. And immediately both of us burst into tears, and I shook his hand and I walked into the back and I said, I'll see you tomorrow. Come get your boots tomorrow. And it was a hard moment, but it was also a wonderful moment because, you don't get that with AJ Wheeler. He's, I said, hey, AJ, you saved my life last year. He's like, that's great. How you doing? He's very used to it, I think. But Cody he definitely felt very close to the situation with previous events. If you've heard my podcast, you'll hear him talk about his time being 24 years old or 23 years old, and we have very similar paths. So it was pretty amazing to have Cody come in and, you know, both of us break down on the sales floor. So that was nice.
I think I'm gonna call it right there. I bet we can find these guys in the bar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.